moderator. And today's session will discuss energy efficiency, renewable energy as the main pillars for the energy transition. As it has been clearly highlighted as well, the importance of gas as a transitional energy efficiency solution and the role of knowledge transfer, financial package, and to having a role model cases for the application of the different energy solution, including the natural gas. I'm honored today to have here a very interesting panelist covering a diverse spectrum. I'm joined here by our session host, Dr. Ahmed Haikal. Dr. Ahmed Haikal is the founder and the chairman of Qala Holding. Yeah. We'll wait 1 minute. One of our major hosts is joining. But again, as I mentioned, I'll be your moderator today. I was supposed to be a speaker covering the gas, but I'll be the moderator, and Dr. Ahmed will cover the financial part of the gas and the activity that we've done. We'll be joined during the session by His Excellency Engineer Tariq Al Molla, Minister of Petroleum. He's engaged with other government. Step in doing some key remarks in the middle. We'll wait a couple of minutes till we'll be joined by one of our speakers. Thank you for your patience, and again, welcome again. And as I said, our session will cover renewable energy and energy efficient as main pillar. Let me start with a couple of remarks for today. As I said, I'm introducing Dr. Ahmed Haikal, Chairman and Founder of Qala Holding and TAQA Power. We are joined to my right by my friend Andrea Steger, elected Vice President of the International Gas Union and its upcoming President. Dr. Hanan Morsi, Deputy Executive Secretary for Program and Chief Economist with the United Nations, especially focused on Economic Commission for Africa. I'm joined as well by our friend Major General Mohammed Zamalloud, Governor of the New Valley Governorate. Just a few remarks. A week before we meet here today, the IEA have issued a very alarming report, at least for me. It shows the acceleration of the global energy crisis, showing that it's for the first time in 2022, for the first time in decades, the number of people without electricity, reliable electricity source is rising, and it's reaching 775 million persons, most of them in Africa. And still, for the last decade in Africa, the second cause of death is house pollution, pneumonia, cancers that is caused to wife, daughters, sisters cooking. They do not have access to any clean infrastructure of energy. They're still cleaning with wood, with dirty sources. Although the overall number of these casualties have decreased due to a better penetration of electricity, gas, and renewable to these countries, cities, and villages. But is this enough? I don't think so. And my questions today will be, how are we going to balance between security, and between social and business stability, and between the quality of life. My second question would be, how are we going to finance all these necessary and needed infrastructure? They are not leisure infrastructure, they are not a pleasant, they are needed infrastructure for hospital, school, houses. How do we need to orient and educate the people, the institution, the government, the financial organization? Or we need to focus on one of them or all of them? With that, I would ask Dr. Ahmed Hikal, our host speaker today, to share his point of view.
Thank you, Khaled. Thank you. I'm really delighted to be in this panel. Thank you. Qala Holdings has investments in a variety of industry sources. So we own refineries, we own, and it's not common sense to say refineries in CUP, but I am happy to say that we own a refinery, because without refineries, the world will have big problems. We own solar power plants, we own wind power plants, we own natural gas distribution, we own biomass, and and biofuels. So, and we own electricity grids. So we understand the variety of sources of energy that can exist and that need to coexist in order to make a good energy transition. The world will remain with hydrocarbons for a long period of time. So the dogma associated with CUP being only green, in my view, is misguided. Why? Because there are a lot of emissions that we can cut from current hydrocarbon sources that will exist for a long period of time and that will remain with us. Let me take on what Khaled is saying. How can we make a just transition? And Major General Zamalut here will highlight in his presentation. But I'll share a very small story. Major Zamalut, I did not know him. I found a phone call and he tells me, I want to come and meet you. I was surprised because usually government officials do not come to the private sector. So Major Zamalut came to me and he said, I want natural gas in New Valley. We have 14,000 people in Kharga, 28,000 households in Kharga, 20,000 households in Dakhla, and they don't have access to a lot of natural gas, and their electricity is generated from diesel generator. So I told him, Mr. Governor, if we cooperate, we will be able to connect New Valley with natural gas. And indeed, we were able, with the help of Taqa and with the help of Khaled, to devise a way whereby we can move compressed natural gas by truck from 400 kilometers away to the New Valley, and then we made a local network of 7-bar network to distribute gas to 14 or 18,000 households. This is the kind of innovation that A, has contributed to a just transition, and B, because those guys suddenly have natural gas that is extremely affordable, and it has reduced pollution substantially because electricity in this part was generated from diesel. So instead of burning diesel and generating a lot of emission, now natural gas is the source of energy to generate electricity. And we have built a station to fuel natural gas to cars. And this natural gas to cars has made it such that people who own taxis and own cars in the New Valley Governorate have more money in their pockets because the natural gas is much cheaper than gasoline. So on a variety of levels, this has contributed to a just transition because people have a better livelihood. Two, it encourages a lot of industries to come to the New Valley Governorate. And three, it has a significant reduction of pollution way. Let me give you another story. In my view, the largest pollutants are the upstream oil and gas through flared gas. Flared gas, in my view, is an unmitigated disaster because if we leave it, if you fly over Iraq, if you fly over Algeria, if you fly over the Permian Basin in Texas, the amount of flaring that is taking place in those places are beyond imagination. We went to the government and we told them we will be able to we are willing to invest money to capture all this flared gas, clean it, take the heavy stuff out, sell it directly, and then the natural gas, we can generate electricity out of that. Think of the amount of carbon emissions that are being reduced as a result of such action. This is, in my view, a very clear, clean-cut way of reducing emissions globally. I don't know exactly what are the statistics as far as flaring that is taking place, how much is it contributing, but in my view, it is an enormous amount of CO2 emissions. I think COP is starting to exhibit a certain level of environmental fundamentalism, not very much different than terrorist fundamentalism, okay? Because if you ignore hydrocarbons, which are around 80% of total energy consumption and will remain with us for the next 75, 100 years and maybe more, then we need to see how we can cut the emissions in this industry. This industry is the single largest source of pollution, and there is a lot of low-hanging fruits that we can make investments in order to reduce emissions and make a serious dent in global emissions. Thank you very much. I'll stop now. And
Thank you, Dr. Ahmed. It was very interesting to see the prioritization that we should give to elements of the industry on the value chain and in which areas. With that, I would like to move to Andreas Steger, Vice President of the International Gas Union, sharing your thoughts.
Thank you, Khaled, and thanks for having IGU here today. The International Gas Union is the global voice of gas, as we say, representing about 95% of the total gas market. And with gas, I mean not just natural gas, but gases which are also greener with biomethane, hydrogen. Of course, innovation is there. So our industry is already in the transition phase. But let me use this very important occasion to flag one point. Today, according to the United Nations, on this planet, we have reached 8 billion people. So we have a challenge to serve these people well with energy. In the last 20 years, energy demand has increased by 77%. So we need a lot of instruments and a lot of good instruments where natural gas, I think, can play a very important role. We had, indeed, in the last months, the exacerbation of a certain crisis that was already mounting globally. And I can recall one interesting talk with mine earlier this year. There are three food fuels. We have to tackle all of this. And we have discovered also in Europe that also natural gas is used for fertilizers, not just for power generation. So we have to acknowledge the complexity of the energy space, I think. And in that respect, the transition to be fair and greener must recognize at least a couple of facts. We have different starting points, different transitions. We have, of course, situations where economic development is already ongoing, has already matured, but in other regions, we have to support economic development as the first point of a sustainable transition, first of all. Second point, innovation. For sure, our industry is pursuing innovation dramatically in a positive sense. And in that respect, also, apart from the very important element and experiences that were mentioned with respect to Egypt, I think also CCS and CCUS, of course, is a major element to focus on, because like it or not, in whatever scenario, we have to capture emissions also. And in that respect, our industry is best positioned to technology developments in that respect as well. So that's very important. The other point that I briefly mentioned is finance. We are having some unintended consequences of some sort of narrative saying we can move away from fossil fuels immediately. We are on track with a net zero of 2050. Unfortunately, this is not exactly the case, because there are lots of preconditions under those scenarios, and one of which is reducing demand, which I told you at the beginning was exactly not the one thing that we are witnessing. And we are not even witnessing a solid reduction of emissions, unfortunately. The three events and 3 years where we had decrease of emissions in the last 30 years were the dissolution of the Soviet Union, the Lehman crisis, and COVID. We have to do more. And to do more, we require more finance, not to block projects, but to sustain projects with the right metrics. The right metrics being ESG compliant, fantastic. But let's focus on ESG, not just E, because otherwise we are blocking many important resources. And honestly, as a European, I have my doubts about having the European Union nowadays searching for more energy, especially in Africa, but not being in a position to finance gas projects, because we have been blocking EIB in that respect. So these are initial thoughts. I do share substantially and fundamentally the low-hanging fruit we have to pursue in terms of reduction of methane emissions. We have, as an industry, a strong commitment there, and of course we have to enlarge the best practices, so to stimulate the good financing, the good policy, and the good stimulus for the industry. Again, one element that I would like to share with you is the fact that EDF, the Environmental Defense Fund, in a recent report published some sort of unintended consequence from the majors being committed to reducing methane emissions, divesting from assets and selling them to independents who are not committed to the same targets, which is, of course, reducing the effects of these kind of targets. Again, I think one key element that is also linked, and with that I'll conclude my initial remarks, with the Egyptian experience that we have heard about, is that we need infrastructures. Infrastructures will be key to serve the needs of the consumers. We cannot just do anything with distributed energy, which is one of the elements we have to pursue, but at the same time, we cannot have a single rule and a single winner in 2050. By the way, 2050 is, of course, a very important target if the curve of the reduction of emissions is just one very long-term trajectory we have to target to. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. We're just being joined by our dear friend, Minister of Energy of Ghana, Dr. Matthew Opoko Prempeh. Please, Dr. Matthew, could you come to the front row? We would like in a few minutes to hear some of your remarks and point of view. And thank you for coming. Now I'll move to our dear friend, Dr. Hanan Morsi, Deputy Executive Secretary and Chief Economist with the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa.
Thank you very much. Pleased to be here. Let me perhaps bring a bit of the, more of the Africa perspective on this discussion. Africa is, of course, bears the brunt of the climate change, even though they haven't contributed. They have contributed less than 4% with 17% of the world population. And yet, Africa suffers the most across regions. African countries, suffer from costs of around 5% of GDP annually due to climate change. And many countries actually need to spend up to 9% to deal with extreme weather shocks due to climate change. So this is an area where really the continent is highly impacted. Financing needs are huge. It's estimated as $3 trillion to meet adaptation and mitigation financing needs by 2030, and in line with the NDCs. Yet, what we are receiving in terms of flow falls far short. So we are, from the total pool of private sector financing, the continent receives less than 3% of these flows. And private sector financing as a total of climate financing for the continent represent 14%, whereas in other regions it's around 50%, and in the US it's 96%. So that takes us to the issue that for us to advance on that agenda, we need to crowd in the private sector. We need the private sector to play a much, much bigger role for us to be able to deal with that. And as all the distinguished speakers before me already talked about this energy paradox. While we have to deal with this climate crisis, Africa has to deal with the fact that we have 600 million people without electricity. We have 800 million without access to safe cooking solutions. So we have to deal with these two issues at the same time, handle this energy deficit that we have, and at the same time look ahead on how we deal with this climate crisis. And to have more private sector, to crowd in more private sector, I think there are a number of things that are required on the financing side. I think we need a lot more de-risking. Guarantees. We need more of credit enhancement instruments. We need more equity investments. And the role of the MDBs will be key. And that's why, as part of the, global financial architecture reform, we've been advancing and advocating for actually having more capitalization for these MDBs to be able to play a bigger role. Also, we've been advocating for rechanneling of the special drawing rights of the IMF for MDBs so that they can actually have leverage and, we get a higher multiplier by channeling these resources through them and to green financing. And also the issue of being able to take more risk on the balance sheets of these MDBs so that they can do more of what we need to happen in the green financing space. We've also been doing a number of very relevant initiatives at ECA, including, for example, we hosted a regional roundtable ahead of COP27 to look at green projects. We looked at 200 projects and tried to basically match with interested investors. Some were able to actually match and get interest from investors, but also those that didn't were able to get feedback in terms of bankability and how they need to change the design, the structure, and what needs to happen. So I think increasing capacity and bankability of projects will be key. We also had another initiative on the SDG 7 initiative for Africa, where we tried to see how we can tackle this energy deficit while at the same time working toward the required climate actions. So as part of that, there was actually that facilitated a transaction between for a 3 billion rands in South Africa, which was financed by PEMCO to DBSA for renewable energy. So I think there is huge scope to do more in that front, but I would like to really emphasize that this will need a lot more active role of the private sector in that space than what we have seen so far.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Very, very interesting, and it gives us hope. At least there is a light at the end of the road for financing of what we need in infrastructure. Before introducing our next speaker, I would like, since Dr. Matthew Opoku Prempeh is here, he's on the move to other session. Dr. Opoku, I'd like to hear some of your remarks. What do you expect as the minister, as a leader in West Africa, to come back to when you go back to Ghana? What do you expect from the global climate leaders here today?
Thank you for inviting me. I couldn't say no to you. There's a lot to do. But this thing we all engage in ourselves called transition is a serious game. It's a serious game that if you don't participate, you end up on your table as a meal because nobody's going to wait for you. It's a serious game that if we are going to win as Africa, we have to collaborate. So this morning I was at the Egyptian Presidency COP UN panel on AJT, a just and affordable energy transition for Africa. We need a common voice, or not many small voices, big voices. We need advocacy to speak to the truth. Now, one of the things going around is that Africa doesn't want to transit or transition because we also want to pollute. But it is not true. Of the 50 worst affected countries by this climate change phenomenon, 35 are in Africa. So we here understand the effects of bad weather than even some of the developed countries. But we also have the biggest energy poverty that you said. On this continent, we have some of the highest tariffs, energy tariffs in the world. We cook mostly, like you said, with bad fuels. So we suffer, the women folks suffer the health effects more than anybody on any climate. So when I go back home, what my people will not accept is to say, you cannot use your natural resources to advance. They will not accept that. Anybody who tries to tell an African country that you cannot use your natural resource to transition means that the people want demonstrations and riots to happen in those countries. Because the money that was promised since 2015 yearly has never been delivered. So if the poor countries are not being given assistance, support, just like things that you talked about, then what do you want them to do? Then you say, don't develop. Stay where you are and let us do everything in Europe. It's not going to happen. I keep saying that if Europeans don't see their self-interest in helping Africa to develop, the people who will cross the boat will still cross. They will cross because everybody wants a better economic well-being for himself and for his children. So it's simple. Some of the things, the word that you said that I love, that I don't want to use, is bankability. When we use bankability, nothing will ever get done. There are multilateral institutions that must take the infrastructure development as priority number one. If you are in Egypt and there's a community 300 miles away from Cairo, 100,000 without electricity, somebody says, it is not feasible if I bring a private investor. No. Because energy is not a luxury. It's a right, a fundamental right. And so governments must work to ensure that the whole population has access to energy to develop socioeconomically. Why should somebody in a town in Cairo not have access to electricity? Or for that matter, should be using bad fuel in cooking? In Cairo, it was probably one of the most polluted places because most of the people who are poor were using bad fuel. When a government came and put in place the structure for natural gas to develop our homes, we see the benefits everywhere. And then everybody becomes productive. When the person doesn't have energy, how does the person become productive? If the child is going to school and the school has no access to electricity, how will the school get onto another lovely program, the knowledge economy that Egypt has developed? So these things cannot just be said. The world should understand that if Africa, they don't support Africa through grants, leverage funds, concessional funding, and also taking the hard work out, Africa will develop anyway. And they might develop through the bad way. So if there's carbon capture technology, let Egypt have it, let Nigeria have it, let Angola have it, such that in their oil fields, they will be green or sustainable. Let's not tell Angola or Senegal or Tanzania that have just found huge gas that keep it in the ground. And still, I will not bring you money, but still transit with me. Africa doesn't want to pollute to develop. We want to have clean, sustainable, reliable, affordable energy to develop. But how, some way, somehow, somebody must pay for it. If you want Africans to pay for it, it will take a longer time. So don't tell me that when I say I'll transit in 2070, you say it's not ambitious. It is very ambitious in Ghana if I have to find 562 billion to do my transitional plan. So for those who are talking, and we all know, for the poor person who is hungry, he doesn't care about where the food is coming from. He has to feed the family. So if you want the food to come from a place, then provide him the access, the ability to be able to cultivate and do that. So all Africa is saying that this transition, we all want to participate, but it must be just, it must be fair, it must be equitable, and not at the expense of Africa. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Matthew. This is House leadership, and I'm very happy and honored that from Egypt, from Sharm el-Sheikh here today, people here, voice of leaders like yourself and our colleagues, other ministers in Africa, you're amongst the very visible leader on this matter, to express yourself, to express the needs, the priority that our people in Africa were looking for. With that, I would like to introduce our fourth speaker, General Mohammed Zamalut. Mohammed Zamalut, Dr. Mohammed Zamalut is the governor of the New Valley. The New Valley Governorate is 42% of Egypt's surface. It's on the south, thank you very much, Excellency. It's on the southwest part of Egypt. Cities are scattered a few hundreds of kilometers between every city and the other. And the nearest gas pipeline is 300 kilometers away. And I think Dr. Ahmed explained before, this is a very rich governorate. Fadi, can we, and before introducing Dr. Mohammed Zamalut, we'll just to share with you 1 minute video. Thank you very much. Can we get again on the stage? سيادة اللي هو محمد زمنلوط، شرفنا وجود حضرتك معانا. قصة نجاح، a success story that we want to showcase. اتفضل.
بداية أنا بتقدم بخالص الشكر للدكتور أحمد والمهندس خالد على دعوتهم الكريمة بحضور هذا الايفنت المحترم يعني. ويمكن أي حد يسأل إيه السبب باختيار الوادي الجديد يعني.
He's welcoming all of us, and the major question why we choose the new Valley Governorate.
الوادي الجديد بيعتبر بيمثل يعني ما يعادل 44% من مساحة مصر، واحنا ممكن الفيلم اللي يعرضه احنا هو بيترجم نفسه يعني.
في فيلم تاني يا فادي. اتفضل يا سيادة محافظ. We will show in few minutes another documentary that is briefing everything about the new Valley Governorate.
فاحنا كان عندنا تحدي كبير جدا جدا، كل محافظات الجمهورية هيوصل لها غاز طبيعي ما عدا الوادي الجديد.
All of the governorates in Egypt have reliable gas infrastructure and not the new Valley
كجزء
Governorate.
من هذا الكوكب لم تكن محافظة الوادي الجديد بمعزل عن التحديات البيئية التي فرضت نفسها على العالم، حيث تتعاظم التحديات البيئية عالمياً وعربياً يوماً بعد يوم، ويشهد العالم اهتماماً متزايداً بقضايا البيئة، ما أصبح يستلزم توحيد الجهود للتصدي لهذه التحديات والمخاطر من أجل البقاء والاستدامة. وانطلاقاً من هذا، سعت المحافظة سعيها لحماية الموارد الطبيعية وتحقيق رفاهة المواطن بتوفير الحياة الصحية وسبل العيش الآمن. تظلها خطة التنمية المستدامة التي تستهدف جمهورية مصر العربية تحقيقها بحلول عام 2030. تعرف محافظة الوادي الجديد على أنها المحافظة الأكبر بين محافظات الجمهورية من حيث المساحة، والأقل من حيث عدد السكان. في القلب منها تقع مدينة الخرجة عاصمة المحافظة، التي تمتد على 47,750 كيلومتر بكثافة سكانية تربو عن 100,000 نسمة، مساحة شاسعة وكثافة سكانية منخفضة وأرض خصبة غنية بالموارد. بما حباها الله من مقومات طبيعية، وقفت مدينة الخرجة كسد منيع لمواجهة التغيرات المناخية. كانت البداية بزيادة المسطحات الخضراء، حيث تم تطوير الحدائق والمتنزهات العامة بالمدينة وقراها بإجمالي 26 حديقة، كان أكبرها حديقة 30 يونيو الترفيهية. كما أطلقت المبادرات لعمل حزام أخضر يحيط بالمدينة وزراعة الغرود لتثبيت الكثبان الرملية والتوسع في الزراعات التي تحيط المدينة لمنع التصحر وتلطيف الأجواء. ويبلغ نصيب الفرد في مدينة الخرجة من المساحات الخضراء 2075 متراً مربعاً، وهو ما يعد من أعلى المعدلات مقارنة بنصيب الفرد على المستوى القومي والعالمي. وقد كانت المحافظة سباقة نحو تقديم التيسيرات لجذب الاستثمار وإدخال الزراعات المستحدثة للتوسع في الرقعة الزراعية وخلق المزيد من فرص العمل، كزراعة النباتات الطبية والعطرية ومبادرة تربية دودة القز لإنتاج الحرير. ويعتمد النشاط الزراعي هنا على المياه الجوفية بمنظومة ذكية لضبط معدلات الاستهلاك تجنباً للسحب الجائر، بالإضافة لاستغلال مياه الصرف المعالج لري المسطحات الخضراء والتحول إلى نظم الري الحديث بديلاً عن الري بالغمر صوناً للمياه وحفاظاً على حق الأجيال القادمة. وتمتاز المحافظة بأعلى نسبة سطوع للشمس في العالم على مدار العام، ما جعلها مصدراً رئيسياً من مصادر الطاقة النظيفة والمتجددة التي اعتمد عليها في توليد الكهرباء وإنارة المساجد والمدارس والمصالح الحكومية. وتوالت الخطوات نحو بيئة نظيفة بإدخال الغاز الطبيعي إلى مدينة الخرجة لتصبح أول مدينة صحراوية في أفريقيا يصلها الغاز الطبيعي بتقنية الغاز المضغوط. ومنذ تصميم البنية التحتية لمدينة الخرجة تم مراعاة الأسس والاعتبارات البيئية للحد من الملوثات، فوضع مكب النفايات على بعد 10 كيلومتر من أقرب كتلة سكنية، كما أنشئ مدفن صحي لدفن المخلفات الصلبة والتخلص الآمن منها على مساحة 8 أفدنة بطريق الخرجة الداخلة. وأديرت المخلفات بنظم حديثة لاستغلالها من خلال مصانع تدوير المخلفات الصلبة والمخلفات الزراعية لإنتاج الأسمدة العضوية وغيرها من المنتجات. وأزيحت المنطقة الحرفية بعيداً عن الكتلة السكنية، ما ساعد المدينة أن تخلو من تلوث الهواء والضوضاء. وعلى خارطة الاهتمام وضع ذوو الهمم على رأس الأولوية، فأنشئ مركز الدكتور حسن حلمي لتأهيل ذوي الاحتياجات الخاصة لخدمة أبناء المحافظة والمحافظات المجاورة، وقدمت لهم العناية والرعاية الكاملة، وخصصت لهم وسائل الانتقال مجاناً من خلال هذا الصرح. ومواكبة لخطط الدولة للتحول الرقمي وميكنة الخدمات، تم إنشاء أول مجمع مميكن للمصالح الحكومية على مستوى الجمهورية بمدينة الخرجة، يحاكي العاصمة الإدارية الجديدة ويرتبط بها. وللماضي هنا سحر وبريق لا تمحوه الحداثة أبداً، فقد عنيت المحافظة بآثارها وتراثها، وهو ما تجلى واضحاً حينما كشفت رحلات التنقيب الأخيرة عن محميات طبيعية تحتضنها رمال الخرجة. وسرعان ما صدر القرار المحلي لإضافة منطقة قرن جناح كمحمية طبيعية جيولوجية لما تتميز به من حفريات تعود إلى أحقاب زمنية تقدر بملايين السنين.
Thank you, Mr. Governor. ألف شكر سيادة المحافظ. It's a role model, of course, for a governor and his cities that want really to deliver. سيادة المحافظ.
شكرا. لو في اي سؤال او اي حاجه تحت امرك.
Is there any question from تفضل.
Dr. Engineer Saad Sabri is the CEO of ISESCO Corporation for consultations and studies for the environment, climate change, and sustainability. My question regarding to how to integrate between, because in the beginning, I thought that you converted to the natural gas, while there is a possibility to go to the solar panels and photovoltaics. But I found that from the film that you have both. How to integrate between both, and also the economic viability vis-a-vis the solar panels, the solar electricity, and natural gas. Thank you.
It clearly the case that generating electricity out of solar beats electricity generation through natural gas. It's less costly. It depends on how much the government gives you natural gas to burn. What is the cost of that? But in general, solar generation is less costly than generating electricity out of natural gas. So what we do, but if you introduce batteries, the story becomes different. So what we typically do is we generate electricity out of solar during the day, and then if there is more need, then you generate electricity out of natural gas. That is until there is banking with the network. If the government introduces the framework of banking, which is during the day you sell to the grid and during the night you take from the grid, but still Egypt is, the framework is being implemented at this point in time, so we don't have access to it. So for the time being, if you want to have this, then the story becomes a little bit more complicated if you have wind, because you can have a combination of solar, wind, and natural gas. So there is a way of managing that delicate. Yeah. And then the thing that is also going to come, and Loa Zamalut is just reminding me, is that for mobility, so far this is a replacement of gasoline. But now there is a solution for mobility to change diesel engines, not to change diesel engine, but to complement dual fuels, to have dual fuels working in the same. So you can reach 50-50 natural gas diesel combination for big trucks, and that will also cut emissions in a very substantial way. And there are the trucks that can operate 100% natural gas, but you have to buy them this way, fully converted. You cannot convert a diesel engine into 100% gas. So yeah. So we have in Cairo today about 50 trucks that are operating in an experiment to have dual fuels introduced to the engine, 50% natural gas and 50% diesel.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ahmed. Thank you, Sheikh Loa Zamalut. Very, very interesting role model of a governorate. And it's just a small example with what we see in lots of places all over Africa. I'll go back. Dr. Hanan. General Zamalut would like have an open invitation to all of you here. We have right now a temporary daughter station in the governorate that received the mobile CNG. We are concluding the permanent receiving CNG station. It has been delayed due to the shortage of the supply chain all over the world, but you will all be, it's an open invitation for you. We will put it on LinkedIn and Facebook as well. With that, Dr. Hanan, I would like, after you've heard some of the examples and heard my friend Andrea, your thoughts of how some of these examples can benefit from the different initiatives that you have presented?
Thank you very much. It's a fascinating example. Congratulations, Governor. It's excellent, really work and leading the way on the green transition. And this is, some of the things that we need to have more peer-to-peer learning within the continent from, at a local level for other countries and other localities to benefit from your own experience. So perhaps would be to you with other African cities and governments to see how you can exchange your experience, because that would be really key. I think what it shows is that there is when there is a will, there is a way. So when we have, the strong will to move into that direction and that destination of a green transition, and develop, but yet have in mind the need to do that in a sustainable way, it can be done. And I think it's a great example that actually, this is why we need more of all these financing modalities that allow, scale and speed. Because for us to do more of that, that's what we need. And we cannot reach that scale with the current arrangements. So I think that would be really key. And then another thing I think that we haven't perhaps talked about is the issue of, developing carbon credit markets. I think this will be really, really key for Africa going forward. And we need to work on that. And as ECA, we've been supporting, for example, in the Congo Basin, we've been supporting establishing carbon registry and harmonized protocol. And I think this is an area where Africa has a huge potential that we need to keep in mind and work towards, because that will avail a lot of, if the market is improved and its functioning improved, can avail a lot of resources that can be then used for funding many of the things that we need to do for the green transition. Back to you.
Thank you, Hanan. Again, you're giving us very positive energy. Andrea?
Yeah, a couple of comments also on my side. First of all, congratulations also from my side. Again, if I look at perspective-wise, mobility, for instance, is taking stock of gas in also using biomethane in Europe, for instance. So waste to energy is a way to use gas also in a new, innovative way. So let's not stop innovation flows, because I think we have a lot to do there. The second point is that I think one takeaway from today's meeting, at least on my side, is that I will be very keen to continue dialogue, open dialogue and collaboration with the institutions, of course, with the intervention from the Minister of Ghana, but at the same time, I think on the IGU side, we are very ready to share experiences, best practices, and indeed make the case for the private industry to be more active, if possible, of course, in different regions. Let me conclude with the fact that early next year, IGU present its first Africa gas report. Take stock of what is already ongoing, but of course it will be the first occasion to have a focus on this region, which is crucial and center in developing the energy for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. And to add, the Africa Gas Report will be launched from Cairo in February during the Egypt's Petroleum Show that is under the auspices of President Sisi. The Minister Mullah will be there. We will have a very big session. We'll have many African countries as far as Dr. Prempeh. This will going to be a very interesting session in February, and we will launch the Africa report. I would like to, Dr. Ahmed have to leave in 5 minutes, but I would like to ask each one of the speakers, if you are the president of the world, if you're the leader of this event, what are the 3 things will every one of you do? So I'll start with Dr. Ahmed.
There are plenty of innovations on the ground. And this what happened in New Valley is a very clear innovation, and I can tell you that there are tens and tens and tens of innovation that are there, that we need not to block our minds to just the issue of green. Green is an important part of the transition. It's an important destination that we need to walk, but there are plenty of technologies that need to come in order to make green viable. Viable for 100% of the time, and reduce reliance on hydrocarbons. In the meantime, we cannot block our minds to tens and tens and tens of innovations that exist both at the micro level, on the medium level, and on the very large scale level. And the people in COP need to listen more to how to reduce emission from hydrocarbon, as opposed to just reject it and say, you know, hydrocarbon is bad, let's, you know, throw it in the sea.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmed. And I know you have to catch a plane in 60 minutes. So we will continue, but would like to thank you. It will be just we will thank Dr. Ahmed Hekel. He has to leave for hosting this session. His Excellency the Governor was asking that among the ideas, the lot of ideas, the think tanks, is the small water well that need power, and we need to have reliable, economical source of energy to really use this well. لان يبقى عندنا طاقه مقبوله واقتصاديه لذلك، ودي حاجات. وانا عايز اسمع برضو راي حضرتك لو كنت حضرتك زعيم العالم، فحضرتك تقول لنا لو حضرتك زعيم العالم ايه الحاجات اللي تعملها عشان توجد البالانس بين التنميه الاقتصاديه وبين الحفاظ على البيئه. حضرتك ممكن تقولها بالعربي وانا هترجم سياده المحافظ.
زعيم النفس، انا مش زعيم العالم ولا حاجه، بس انا اقترح يعني احنا بامانه بالظروف اللي قال عليها الدكتور احمد، ان فعلا نسبه عدد السكان قليل، نسبه الكربون تعتبر زيرو كربون، ان احنا برضه في نفس الوقت عندنا المساحات الخضراء عاليه جدا جدا. في عندنا تحدي اللي هو تحدي الغاز اللي نوصله للمنازل، والحمد لله احنا نجحنا معاكم وصلناه. فضل التحدي الثاني الاستثمار الزراعي بعيد عن الطاقه الكهربائيه، فاحنا عايزين طاقه نظيفه او غاز، يعني سواء طاقه متجدده او غاز، بحيث انه يساعد، لان عندنا اكثر من مليون فدان بيستهلكوا سولار وطاقه كثيره جدا.
General Zamalud just said, I'm not going to be the leader of the world, I'm leader of myself. And he keep focus on the New Valley Governorate, and he very focused on expanding investment in agriculture, and he wants clean energy, regardless it's wind, it's solar, it's gas. He wants clean, reliable energy, and for the same reason and the same cause that the Minister of Ghana have said, he wants a decent quality of life for the people of his governorate, and everybody had an opportunity of work first.
الحاجه الثانيه بالنسبه للعالم بقى، اتمنى ان كل اي ايفنت او مؤتمرات ما نبداش المؤتمر الثاني الا لما احنا نقول ايه اللي نفذناه من توصيات المؤتمر الاولاني.
In general, if he is the leader of the world, he will not allow to move from a conference to another one unless we make assessment and we know how much did we conclude from the first one? Did we commit on the payment and the investment we said before doing the second conference? Actually, this is a crucial, important point. I moved to our third virtual global leader, Dr. سيادة اللواء, thank you very much for being with us. That has been very inspiring. So I'll move to our third virtual leader, Andreas Steger. What would you do if you're the leader of the world?
Well, more moderately, I will be leading the IGU soon. But at the same time, I would say we have one strong priority, I think, we have to face, and we have to devote all our energies dedicating energy poverty first. Second point is how to make energy the most efficient and effective in terms of carbon reduction emissions. So these are the two targets I would like to focus on. The third point is, in these very big challenges, try to keep vision, but also pragmatism, because otherwise we are lost, as I said, on occasions, we are lost in transition. The risk we are facing, and I would like to avoid just the headlines being right. I would like the projects being delivered. I think our industry is committed to.
Thank you very much. Actually, you're not going to be the last. You're going to be before Andreas. So no women discrimination. As we've seen, we were very proud as Egyptian to see a lady minister receiving the President of the United States. So it's inspiring to all of us here in Egypt. And what would you do if you are the leader of the globe? And you would be the first woman leader of the globe.
Thank you. Well, we've made it here so far, so that's a good start. And so if I would be, if I can, have the magic wand to have what I want, I think I would want to have a global, climate finance market that is just, equitable, and inclusive. I think if we can sort that, everything else would fall in place. I think this is at the core of what we're going through, is the fact that we don't have one. And of course, having one will also include having, a functioning carbon credit market that is, you're able to trade cross-border. It would have everything we're talking and dreaming of. So if I would choose one, I'll dream big and choose this one.
Thank you very much, Hanan. Before giving my concluding remark, we have in the room here as well Milton Catherine, Secretary General of the International Gas Union. Eddie, can we share a mic? I would like to hear some of your remarks. We don't have every day here the Secretary General and the Vice President of the International Gas Union, so I want to benefit from that.
Thanks,
It's the Gas Day, and it's Africa here.
Yeah, thanks, Khaled. It's a great privilege for you to call upon me unexpectedly like this. So thank you very much. Well, like Andrea said, the International Gas Union sees a solution to climate change through the responsible uses of various gases, particularly as they contribute a low carbon content, and they are a traditional fuel away from other more dangerous substances, etc. But also because the industry provides the infrastructure that will be necessary, the technological know-how, the scientific expertise to help the world move to its cleaner future. So you asked what people will do if they were the world leader. I think what I would do is simply say that people need to remember that sustainable development is certainly about environmental improvement, but it's also about social and economic development. And any sort of movement in a policy sense or a program sense that ignores the basic rights of human beings, access to food, access to housing, access to energy, is doomed to fail. So I think we need to remember that we need to take those basic rights of human beings into account in the policies that we advance. If you look at a place like West Africa, the countries in West Africa, for example, the energy transition means something very different to those countries than it does to people in Europe. And even within Europe, there are places within Europe like Northern Ireland, for example, where 60% of the electricity comes from diesel fuel. So energy transition means different things in different countries, and those differences must be taken into account for policy to be successful.
Thank you a lot, Milton. I thought that I'm the one who's going to deliver some keynotes, but I had a very rich panelist here that really overwhelmed the session. And allow me to conclude, summarize the remark in few words. Plenty of innovations, delivery, vision and being pragmatic, inclusive, social and economical development, stability, rights of human being to access energy for the world. Thank you very, very much for your attendance today, and I thank all my colleagues here, the panelists, Hanan, Andrea, Dr. Ahmed who left, and Zamalud. Really, it was a pleasure. This is one of the very exciting panels that I've moderated, actually. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed the rest of the session in the COP27.